My name is Ryan, and I'm 36 years old. I've been married to my wife, Megan, who's 34, for the past 12 years. We met in college. She was this fiery, confident girl who had this way of making every room she walked into feel alive. I fell for her hard and fast, and for a long time I thought I had hit the jackpot. But lately things have been off. Megan had always been a bit high maintenance, but in the last 6 months, her attitude had shifted from assertive to downright dismissive. Every little thing I did seemed to annoy her. She'd snap at me for forgetting to pick up groceries, or for not folding the laundry correctly. At first, I chalked it up to stress. Her job as a real estate agent had been keeping her busy, and she'd been spending more evenings at networking events. But the excuses started piling up. Suddenly, there were late-night showings that didn't make sense. She started spending more time on her phone, laughing at texts she wouldn't share. When I asked her about it, she'd roll her eyes and accuse me of being paranoid. God, Ryan, not everything is some big conspiracy. Can you stop being so insecure? I wanted to believe her. I didn't want to be the controlling husband who questioned her every move. But in the back of my mind, a little voice kept whispering that something wasn't right. I ignored it, hoping that things would go back to normal. Looking back, I wish I'd trusted my gut sooner. It would have saved me a lot of pain. It all came crashing down at a party hosted by our mutual friends, Mike and Sarah. They were celebrating Mike's promotion, and Megan insisted we go. She seemed unusually excited, spending hours getting ready and picking out a dress that was far more revealing than her usual style. When I commented on it, she laughed it off. "You never complain when I dress up," she said, flashing that dazzling smile I used to love. The party was in full swing when I noticed something odd. Megan was being unusually flirty with one of Mike's friends, a guy named Alex. I had met Alex a few times before. Charming, single, and the kind of guy who loved to brag about his conquests. First, I tried to brush it off. Megan was naturally outgoing, right? But as the night wore on, her behavior became harder to ignore. I caught her leaning in close to Alex, her hand lingering on his arm as she laughed at something he said. My stomach churned, but I told myself I was overreacting. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling, so I kept an eye on her. Later that evening, I couldn't find Megan. I walked around the house, checking the kitchen, the patio, even the garage, but she was nowhere. Then I heard a faint giggle coming from upstairs. My heart sank. I followed the sound to a guest bedroom, and as I reached the door, I heard Megan's voice, low and flirtatious. "Stop, someone might hear us," she whispered, though there was no urgency in her tone. I froze, my hand on the doorknob. Part of me didn't want to know, didn't want to confirm the growing suspicion in my chest. But I couldn't walk away. Slowly, I pushed the door open. What I saw felt like a punch to the gut. Megan was sitting on the edge of the bed, her dress slightly hiked up, with Alex standing between her legs. They weren't fully undressed, but it was obvious what had been going on, and where it was heading. Megan's eyes went wide when she saw me. "Ryan, what the hell are you doing?" she snapped, as if I was the one who had done something wrong. Alex stammered, "Hey man, it's not what it looks like." "Not what it looks like?" I said, my voice shaking. "Really? Then what is it, Alex? Because it sure as hell looks like my wife is about to screw you in our friend's house." Megan jumped up, smoothing her dress. "You're being ridiculous, Ryan. We were just talking." "Talking?" I gestured at them, incredulous. "That's what you call this?" "I'm not an idiot, Megan." Her expression shifted from surprise to anger. "Oh, grow up, Ryan. You're so damn boring all the time. Maybe if you paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have to find someone else to have fun with." The words hit me like a slap. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was the woman I had loved for over a decade, the woman I thought I knew. And now she was standing there, unapologetic, blaming me for her actions. I didn't know what to say, so I left. I couldn't stay in that house, couldn't bear to look at her or Alex for another second. As I drove home alone, the image of them together replayed in my mind over and over. But the nightmare was just beginning. I had no idea how much worse things would get. Megan didn't come home that night. When I woke up the next morning, the house was quiet, and her side of the bed was untouched. I wasn't sure whether to be relieved or enraged. By noon, she finally walked through the door, sunglasses perched on her head and a coffee cup in her hand, like nothing had happened. "Good morning," she said breezily, as if we hadn't just shattered our marriage the night before. "Are you serious, Megan?" I asked, my voice thick with anger. "You disappear all night after getting caught with Alex, and now you're just going to waltz in here like everything's fine?" She sighed dramatically, setting her coffee down on the counter. "Ryan, you're overreacting. Nothing happened, okay? I already told you. Don't lie to me." I slammed my fist on the table, cutting her off. "I saw you. I heard you. How stupid do you think I am?" Her mask of indifference slipped for a moment, and she rolled her eyes. "Fine. You want the truth? Yes, I've been seeing Alex. But it's not like it's serious." "God. Ryan, you act like I've been plotting your murder or something."
Ist daher stumped?
"Not serious? You're sleeping with another man. Megan, do you even hear yourself?" "You're so dramatic," she said, crossing her arms. "It's not like I meant for this to happen. But can you blame me? You've been so distant. All you care about is work, and you've completely stopped trying with me. I needed something more, Ryan. Something exciting." Her words cut deep, but what hurt even more was the utter lack of remorse in her voice. She wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was just sorry she'd been caught. "Exciting," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "You think this is about excitement? You think betrayal is just some game you can play when you're bored?" "Oh, please," she shot back, "like you're some perfect husband. Maybe if you weren't so boring, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The woman I had loved for years, who I thought I would grow old with, was standing there blaming me for her choices, acting like she was the victim. "You know what, Megan?" I said, my voice cold and steady. "If I'm so boring, why don't you pack your things and go be with Alex? Because I'm done. I'm done with your lies, your excuses, all of it." She didn't flinch. Instead, she smirked. "You think you can just throw me out? Good luck with that, Ryan. This is my house too, and I'm not going anywhere." Her defiance lit a fire inside me, but I knew I had to keep my composure. "Fine," I said through gritted teeth. "But don't expect me to sit around and pretend this marriage is anything more than a joke. You've made your bed, Megan. Now lie in it." As I walked out of the room, I realized just how far gone she was. This wasn't the woman I married. This was someone else entirely. Someone who didn't care about the destruction she left in her wake. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. I just didn't know then how far I'd go to make her feel even a fraction of the pain she'd caused me. The days that followed were a blur of anger and disbelief. Megan and I barely spoke, existing in the same house like strangers. I threw myself into work, trying to escape the suffocating tension at home. But every time I saw her, the image of her and Alex together flashed in my mind. She, on the other hand, acted as if nothing had happened. She still went out, dressed to the nines, coming home late and refusing to tell me where she'd been. Whenever I confronted her, she'd snap back with some cruel remark. "This is what happens when you're married to someone who doesn't know how to have fun, Ryan," she said one evening after I questioned her whereabouts. "Maybe you should thank Alex for showing me what I've been missing." I didn't respond. Couldn't. Her words were like poison, seeping into every part of me. But the worst part came 2 weeks later when I noticed something wasn't right with my health. It started with a burning sensation when I used the bathroom, something I'd never experienced before. At first, I thought it was nothing, maybe a UTI or some mild infection. But when it didn't go away, I went to the doctor. The tests came back, and the doctor looked at me with a mix of sympathy and discomfort. "Ryan, the results show you've contracted chlamydia. It's an STD. Have you and your partner been sexually active with anyone else?" The blood drained from my face. "Megan." I drove home in a haze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When I walked through the door, she was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she didn't have a care in the world. "We need to talk," I said, my voice low and strained. She glanced up, raising an eyebrow. About what? I just got back from the doctor, I said, holding up the lab results. Care to explain how I ended up with chlamydia? Her face froze for a split second before she recovered, rolling her eyes. Oh, for God's sake, Ryan. You probably picked it up from some public bathroom or something. Don't blame me. Don't insult my intelligence, Megan, I shouted, my anger finally boiling over. I've only been with you. So unless you've got a better explanation, I think it's pretty clear where this came from. She stood up, crossing her arms defensively. Okay, fine. Maybe it's from Alex. But it's not a big deal. You can just take antibiotics or whatever and move on. Move on, I repeated, my voice shaking. You gave me an STD, Megan. Do you even hear yourself? Do you even care what you've done to me? To us? She shrugged. Honestly, Ryan, I think you're being a little dramatic. It's not like it's life-threatening. That was it. Something inside me snapped. Her indifference, her complete lack of remorse, the way she dismissed the pain she had caused. It was too much. I walked out of the house that night, needing air, needing space, needing something to stop me from losing control. As I drove aimlessly around town, one thought kept circling in my mind. She wasn't going to stop. She wasn't going to change. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The days after Megan's STD confession were a whirlwind of anger, humiliation, and a growing darkness I couldn't shake. Her callousness replayed in my head on a loop. It's not a big deal. Those 4 words haunted me. I tried to focus on work, friends, anything to distract myself, but it didn't help. Megan, meanwhile, kept acting as if nothing had changed. She went about her life, coming and going as she pleased, her phone glued to her hand. I could tell she was still in contact with Alex, but I didn't have the energy to confront her anymore. One evening, I got home late from work, expecting the usual cold silence in the house. Instead, I found Megan on the phone, laughing. She didn't even stop when I walked in. Yeah, I'll see you later, she said, hanging up with a smile. Going out again? I asked, my voice hollow. She smirked. What's it to you, Ryan? You're the one who said we're done. Why do you care where I go? Her words stung, but I didn't let it show. I care because you're still living under my roof. Maybe it's time you pack up and leave. She rolled her eyes. Oh, stop pretending you're some tough guy. We both know you don't have the guts to kick me out. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to say something I'd regret. Instead, I turned and walked out of the house, slamming the door behind me. I drove aimlessly, my thoughts spiraling. How had it come to this? How had the woman I loved become so cruel, so indifferent? I wanted to hurt her the way she'd hurt me, to make her feel the same anguish she had inflicted. Then I saw her. I was driving back home when I spotted Megan walking down the street, dressed to kill, clearly on her way to meet Alex, or someone else. She didn't see me, but that didn't matter. A dark, impulsive thought crept into my mind. What if she wasn't so untouchable? I slowed the car, gripping the wheel tightly. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at her from a distance, the streetlights casting long shadows. Do it, a voice in my head whispered. Show her she can't keep walking all over you. Before I could second-guess myself, I hit the gas. The sound was sickening. A dull thud as the car clipped her side, sending her sprawling onto the pavement. My hands were shaking as I slammed on the brakes, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Megan lay on the ground, groaning, clutching her leg. Her face was twisted in pain, but she was conscious. People nearby rushed to her, shouting and calling for help. I stayed in the car, frozen, my mind racing. When the ambulance arrived, I pretended to be a panicked husband who had just lost control of the car. The paramedics didn't question it, and Megan, too stunned and in pain to argue, was whisked away to the hospital. As I watched the ambulance drive off, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and dread. I had done something terrible, something I couldn't take back. But for the first time in weeks, Megan wasn't the one in control. I arrived at the hospital not long after Megan was admitted. I needed to keep up appearances, to make sure no one suspected the truth. When I walked into her room, she was lying on the bed, her leg in a cast, looking pale but furious. "What the hell were you thinking, Ryan?" she hissed as soon as the nurse left us alone. I played the part of the concerned husband, keeping my voice low and shaky. "Megan, it was an accident. I didn't see you in time. I'm so sorry."
Accident.
She narrowed her eyes. "You drove right at me. Don't think I didn't notice how you slowed down first. What were you trying to do? Scare me?" I froze, but only for a second. "Megan, I would never hurt you. I was just distracted. I swear." She stared at me, her expression calculating. For the first time in weeks, she seemed uncertain. "You're lucky I didn't tell the cops," she said finally. "But if you ever pull something like that again, I'll ruin you." Her words, instead of scaring me, only fed the growing fire inside. Even now, lying in a hospital bed with a broken leg, she couldn't take any responsibility. She couldn't acknowledge the damage she had done to our marriage, let alone to me. I forced myself to nod, pretending to be apologetic. "Of course, Megan. I'd never do anything to hurt you. I just want to make things right." She snorted. "Yeah, right. You've got a long way to go, Ryan." That night, as I sat in the hospital's waiting area, I couldn't stop replaying her words in my mind. She had me exactly where she wanted me, or so she thought. The doctors said she'd need at least a couple of months to recover, which meant she'd be dependent on me for a while. A twisted sense of satisfaction crept in. Maybe this was my opportunity to take back control, to show her what it felt like to be vulnerable and powerless. But there was one thing I hadn't considered. Megan wasn't the type to stay down for long. 2 days after the accident, Megan had already started making moves. From her hospital bed, she called a lawyer and began laying the groundwork for divorce proceedings. She hadn't said anything to the police about the accident yet, but she made it clear that she could. "I'm willing to keep this quiet," she said one night when I came to visit. "But it's going to cost you." "Cost me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Half of everything, Ryan. The house, the savings, your retirement. You're going to give me exactly what I deserve, or I'll tell the cops you hit me on purpose." "Think they won't believe me?" Her smirk was back, that same smug expression that made my blood boil. She thought she had me cornered, and maybe she did. But I wasn't done yet. While Megan was busy plotting her escape, I started planning mine. I began gathering evidence of her affair. Texts, photos, even conversations with mutual friends who had seen her and Alex together. If she wanted to play dirty, I was ready to go even lower. The situation was a powder keg, and we were both holding matches. I just didn't know how far either of us was willing to go to strike first. Megan was discharged from the hospital 2 weeks after the accident. Her leg was in a cast, and she needed crutches to get around. For the first time in our marriage, she was forced to rely on me for everything. Meals, transportation, even basic tasks around the house. But her attitude didn't change. She barked orders at me from the couch, treating me like a servant rather than the man who had spent years supporting her. "Ryan, can you grab my charger? Ryan, this soup is cold. Heat it up again." I did everything she asked, keeping my anger buried under a mask of politeness. I wasn't doing it out of kindness. I was doing it to keep her off guard. At the same time, I was building my case. I had already backed up months of her text conversations with Alex from the cloud. I even managed to get copies of hotel receipts under her name and credit card. She thought she had the upper hand with her threats of legal action, but she didn't realize I was quietly dismantling her defenses. One evening, as she sat on the couch scrolling through her phone, I decided to test the waters. "Megan, we need to talk about the divorce." She looked up, surprised. "Oh? Finally growing a spine? Are you?" "I'm not going to fight you on it," I said, keeping my tone even. "If you want out, we'll settle things fairly and move on with our lives. But I'm not giving you everything." She laughed bitterly. "Fairly? After what you did to me? You're lucky I haven't pressed charges, Ryan. You owe me for putting me through this." I clenched my fists but kept my voice calm. "You mean the same way you owe me for months of lies and betrayal? Or for the STD you gave me? Because I've got plenty of proof if you want to drag this into court." Her smug expression faltered for a split second, but she quickly recovered. No judge is going to care about that, Ryan. They'll see you as the abusive husband who accidentally hit his wife with a car. Good luck spinning your sob story. That was the moment I realized just how far she was willing to go. Megan wasn't going to stop until she destroyed me. The breaking point came a week later. Megan had called Alex over to the house while I was at work, assuming I wouldn't find out. But I came home early that day, walking in to find him sitting on my couch like he owned the place, laughing with her as if nothing had happened. I stood in the doorway, stunned. You're seriously bringing him here? To my house? Alex stood up, looking uncomfortable. Hey man, I was just... Get out, I said, my voice low and deadly. He glanced at Megan, who gave him a nod. Just go, she said, waving him off. I'll call you later. As soon as he was gone, I turned to her. You've got some nerve, Megan. Do you even care about the mess you've made? She rolled her eyes. Oh, grow up, Ryan. You're pathetic. This is why I needed someone like Alex in the first place. You're weak. Something inside me snapped. Weak? You think I'm weak? I leaned in closer, my voice cold. You don't know what I'm capable of, Megan. But you're about to find out. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. She opened her mouth to say something, but I walked out before she could. I had heard enough. That night, I finalized my plan. Megan thought she could keep pushing me, keep humiliating me, but she was wrong. I wasn't going to let her win. I knew exactly how to take her down, and I was prepared to burn every bridge to do it. The next day, I set everything into motion. Megan's arrogance had blinded her to the fact that I was always one step ahead. She thought she had me cornered, but she didn't realize the trap I'd been building for weeks. I started by filing for divorce. My lawyer submitted every piece of evidence I had gathered. The texts, the receipts, and even statements from a few friends who knew about her affair. It painted a clear picture of Megan's infidelity and her reckless behavior. In my state, adultery still carried weight in court, and I planned to use it to its fullest extent. Megan didn't take the news well. When she was served the papers, she exploded. You think you can humiliate me like this? She screamed, throwing the papers onto the floor. I'll ruin you, Ryan. You don't know who you're messing with. I'm not the one who ruined anything, I said calmly. You did that all on your own. But I wasn't done. The next part of my plan involved Alex. I knew he worked at a high-end sales job, and his reputation was everything. So I anonymously sent copies of his texts with Megan, along with screenshots of his conversations bragging about their affair, to his employer. Within days, I heard through the grapevine that Alex had been fired for unprofessional conduct. When Megan found out, she was livid. You're a petty, vindictive bastard, she yelled. Maybe, I said, meeting her glare, but I'm also done being your doormat. The final blow came during the divorce hearing. Megan had tried to paint me as abusive, claiming the car accident was intentional. But my lawyer dismantled her arguments piece by piece, showing that her behavior, including her affairs and her manipulation, was the real source of our marital breakdown. The judge sided with me. Megan was awarded nothing but a small settlement, far less than she had demanded. The house, my savings, and even my car were safe. She was furious, but there was nothing she could do. Epilogue. Moving forward. It's been 6 months since the divorce was finalized, and Megan is out of my life for good. She moved in with a friend after losing the house and her lifestyle. From what I've heard, Alex dumped her not long after he lost his job. As for me, I've started fresh. I sold the house and moved to a smaller place in a different city, far away from the chaos Megan brought into my life. I'm focusing on myself now. Therapy, reconnecting with old friends, and figuring out what I want for the future. Looking back, I realized that Megan's betrayal wasn't just a breaking point. It was a wake-up call. I spent years bending over backward for someone who didn't value me, and it took losing everything to see how much I had been giving up. If there's one piece of advice I'd give to anyone reading this, it's this: trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, don't ignore it. And if someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. Sometimes the best thing you can do is let it all burn and walk away. Thank you for staying with me. This crazy journey is finally over and I'm ready for what's next. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more interesting stories. And leave a comment with what you would do in this situation. See you in the next videos.